Hey guys, it's Chrono. A couple days ago I uploaded a fairly lengthy review on the Audeze LCD-2 in the headphone subreddit, and I just thought I'd make a video version of that review. So yeah, this is it. If you're interested in checking out the full write-up, I'll actually leave a link down in the description below. But without further ado, let's get right into the review. So just to get some of the basic things out of the way, the power requirements on these headphones are actually not too high. They're actually quite lenient. They only come in at an impedance of 70 ohms and a sensitivity of 101 dB. From my experience, the Sennheiser HD6XX was actually harder to drive than these, and so was the Hi-Fi Menson Dara, so they're not that power hungry. I'm still going to recommend an amp, and I think these do benefit from a good source, but at least it doesn't have to be the most powerful amp. Build quality, I mean, it's kind of what you come to expect from full-size LCD headphones. It's just fantastic, very well put together, very premium feeling materials. Everything pretty much is made out of metal, with the exception, of course, of the leather ear pads, the leather headband, and the wooden rings, which, by the way, look very stunning. The comfort here is actually very good. However, I'm not sure if everybody's gonna be able to, put up with the weight of the headphones. So for me, it's not a problem. It was only really a problem during the first week when I was getting adjusted to the headphones, and the clamp was still very tight. But now I feel like I can really wear them indefinitely, and these lambskin ear pads are just fantastic. They're so massive and very soft, and they have a lot of room for your ear to fit in on the inside. And the leather itself is actually very soft on the skin, so comfort very good. I think they work surprisingly well despite the weight. However, that weight could actually be a problem for some people, so just do keep that in mind. Okay, so moving on to what is probably the most important part of this review, and that is of course the sound. So how does the Audeze LCD-2 sound? Well, just like in my written review, I feel like I'm gonna have to preface this by saying that I have never heard a headphone that benefits this much from EQ and DSP. I mean, I find it almost hard to recommend them unless you're willing to use EQ, or at least utilize the tool that Audeze provides in the Reveal Plus plugin. The bass is fantastic, and it's even without EQ, but there are major problems in the mids and some other things going on in the highs. So I will warn you and say that if you're not comfortable with using EQ or just can't be bothered with it, you will not be getting the full experience from these headphones, because their tonality is just so off when you listen to them without any EQ, and even their resolution, their perceived resolution, is lower than it really is. And once you EQ these, I mean, they're fantastic and very competent at the price range which they're at. So for the rest of this review, for the sound review, I'll divide it into sections, bass, mid, and treble, just like it did in my written review. The one thing I will do differently is that in each section I'll talk about the specific sound in this default configuration, as well as the changes that I do with EQ and how it improves them, and also describe the problems that that come from the original stock sound and frequency response of the LCD-2. So I'm editing the video right now. I'm gonna interrupt myself very briefly to announce that I have made a walkthrough tutorial on how to get set up for EQ, and that will be at the end of this video. So if you're interested in that, stick around after the review is done, so you can, I can show you some of the basics to, getting Reveal Plus running, as well as Equalizer Apo, and peace. So first, let's talk about bass. So the bass here, even if in its default configuration, is actually fantastic. It extends pretty much in a completely linear fashion all the way down to 20 Hertz, and it is extremely detailed and textured. It also has a lot of presence, and even though it's a planar magnetic headphone, these have a very good punch and slam dynamic quality to them. The bass here is very enjoyable and very lively. It's very energetic. The only change I do with EQ to this is just to my preference. I like to add a bass shelf under 100 Hertz. I increase that by 1.5 dB. However, I think the bass here is just adjusted to taste, and you really can take it anywhere you want. I mean, if you prefer that more like a Harman Target kind of bass, you can do that because the total harmonic distortion of these is so low. So if you really want that, 5 dB bass shelf, you can do that and you'll get all that bass. So yeah, the bass here, fantastic. Now we get to, of course, the very fun part, which is the mids. So the problem with the mids start at around 1K. There's this peak that gives the mids this strange sort of boxed in congested timbre, and then that is followed by this huge like recession between 3 and 5K. I mean, if you look at graphs, it's basically a valley, and what that does is that it basically sucks out all the body and the presence from the upper mids. So the tonality is off, and they also sound actually pretty grainy, which is not what you want to hear in a $1,000 pair of headphones. However, and this is a big however, once you EQ them, the mids here are actually fantastic. They have a very rich and natural tonality to them. Not only that, once you fix the problematic areas of the EQ, the perceived loss of detail completely goes away, and all that detail that was lost comes back, and you actually realize that the mids here are very fast and very detailed. They really are very good. I've heard some people complain that planar magnetic headphones don't have good timbre compared to dynamics. I actually have no problems with the timbre here. I actually think that it sounds fantastic after EQ. So now for the end of the frequency response, the highs. So the highs here are actually very good. The only problem is this peak at 6K, and the problem with this peak at 6K is, one, it adds a little bit of glare, but two, it really highlighted the issues in the mids, because there's that big recession, and then there's just peak at 6K. But once you EQ that down, the highs here are actually very smooth, and they have very good extension. Fantastic air quality is above 10K. The only thing I change here, aside from reducing the 6K peak, is that I like to erase 9K a little bit, just because I think it gives a nice emphasis to overtones of instruments like cymbals and brass instruments, and I think it just makes it sound more natural. But yeah, overall, once you get rid of the problematic areas, and the highs sound great. They're just very smooth and have fantastic resolution. Okay, so now into Soundstage. It seems like a lot of people like to knock on the LCD-2 Soundstage, but I really don't understand why. I don't find it to be narrow at all. I think it's at least as wide as the DT1990 Pro's Soundstage, and I consider the 1990 to be, a fairly wide sounding headphone. Also, the imaging here, there's nothing special about it, which is a good thing. It's very easy to tell which direction sounds are coming from, and unlike some other planar magnetic headphones, these don't have that problem where the center image is a little weak. So imaging, again, fantastic. The last thing I want to mention about imaging is that the instrument separation here is freaking great. I mean, I listen to a lot of Beatles music, right? And that music was recorded with a lot of the limitations from the 60s, so a lot of instruments and vocals were always mixed together on the same track. And the separation here on the LCD-2 really lets you identify each individual component and passage of instruments and vocals that make up that track. So in that department, great. Lastly, in technical performance, I just want to cover dynamics very quickly. As I mentioned earlier, the dynamics in the bass were fantastic, but what I found more impressive were the microdynamics. So what I mean by this is, when you're listening to, say, a piano player, and you can, I know it's gonna sound a little dramatic, but you can really hear the level of pressure behind each keystroke. And as a guitarist, I listen out for whether or not a guitar was, a string was plucked with a pick or a finger. You can actually really hear that in these headphones, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I really think that the microdynamics in the LCD-2 give instruments a very realistic sense of presence and tension, which make for a very lively sound. So to wrap up this review, I just want to say that I really do think that the LCD-2 is a fantastic performer, one of the best ones in its price range. It's just that it has the caveat that you really need to either EQ or use Audeze's Reveal Plus plugin. It leans more towards a warm tonality, but it really doesn't sacrifice any detail in doing so. And one last quality that I think I should mention, because I personally appreciate this, is that yes, it sounds fantastic with, you know, well recorded, high quality music, but it's also quite forgiving of, you know, not so high quality music. And, you know, as somebody who listens to a lot of rock, that's great, because honestly, rock music quality is a little questionable at times, you know. Also, I'm sure some of you are wondering whether, you know, a headphone like this, which is, you know, I mean, $1,000 is a lot of money, is worth it over something like the DT1990 Pro, Focal LX, some of the, you know, Sennheiser 600 series headphones, or, you know, HiFi-Man Sundara. Well, I can't really determine if it's worth it for you, as we all, you know, value things and differently. We have different preferences. But the one thing that I can say is that there is a, you know, significant performance gain here than when compared to those other headphones, and it's actually a much bigger difference than what I had expected. If I ever get to review them, I'd really like to compare these to the HiFi-Man Anandas, since I really like the Sundaras. I'd also like to compare it to the LCD-X, since, you know, it's very close in price point if you do the creators package thing, as well as the Dan Clark Audio Aeon 2 Open, since they are very similarly priced. Well, that's really all there is to the review. So I hope you guys found it, you know, helpful. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did like it, do consider, you know, dropping a like, maybe even subscribing, and until next time, this is Chrono signing off. So this is a part of the video where I'll be showing you how to, you know, get set up for EQ. I'll leave the link to Audeze Reveal Plus, the Equalizer Apo and Peace plugin in the description below. So the first thing you're going to do is, of course, you're going to start the downloads, as you'll see me here, do here. And also, just for the, you know, simplicity's sake of this tutorial, I'll be just saving everything to my desktop, so all the folders are there. So the first thing you want to do is run the Equalizer Apo Installer. So just hit, you know, agree, accept. Pay attention to where you save it, and then when you get to that screen, just choose your output source. So for me, it's the JDS Labs Element 2, because that's my DAC and amp, and then it's going to ask you to reboot. So see you guys in the next part. Alright, so now that you've installed the Equalizer APO, what you have to do is first open the Reveal Plus folder, then choose your correct version. In my case, it's Windows, and then just run it. Make sure you click all these three things here and choose your right architecture. While you're installing, pay attention to where it's going to be saving the DLL file for Reveal, because that's what we're going to be using very shortly. So in my case, it's under my C drive, program files, and then the Steinberg folder. Okay, so now we go to Program Files, and then we open the Equalizer APO folder, and then in that folder we open the Equalizer APO editor. As you can see, I already have Peace, but just ignore that for now. So what you're actually going to want to do is hit the plus sign, and then choose Plugins, VST plugin, and then you hit the little folder so you can look for the DLL file I mentioned earlier. So for me, it opened instantly, and it's under my C drive, and then program files, and then the Steinberg folder. So in your case, you just have to look for where it installed, try to remember the path if you can while you were installing, and then, you know, select it. Once you got that in Equalizer Apo editor, hit embed. And as you can see, we now have Audeze Reveal running. However, the EQ that I applied is not for my headphones. I don't have the ELA Titanium. So what you're going to do is you're going to click that little arrow and then choose your Audeze headphone model, which in my case is the LCD-2. So now it's apply the correct EQ. And as you can see, there's a peak gain of 3 dB. So what I like to do is that I turn the gain dial here in the Reveal Plus a little downwards so that whatever peaks are there now after I've applied EQ do not go above the 0 dB line, which you can see that's highlighted in red here on the FR graph. And you want to do this so you can avoid clipping. Now I'm going to set it to -5.5 just because that's what I have it set up as in Piece as well. So yeah, that's pretty much how you install Reveal. As you can see, it's pretty easy. It takes like less than 3 minutes. So if you want to give, your Audeze's a different flavor, I recommend you give it a try. So for now, I'm going to turn that off, actually, and I'm going to remove it and turn Piece back on. I already have Piece installed, but I'll still show you what the process is like. So you open the Piece setup, and you would just have to hit that install button, and then it actually won't change that much. It will just do the install very quickly, and then that screen will remain open, and then you just hit start Piece. So as you can see, getting all this EQ software set up is actually very easy, and what you're seeing here on screen is already my LCD-2 preset already applied. So I provided all the numbers for it in the description below. You just gotta plug them in the same way I did. You should be good to go. You can also play around a little bit with EQ here, but yeah, as you can see, it's very easy, very simple, and you can drastically change the sound of your headphones. I hope that was somewhat helpful. I know it was very brief, but yeah, see you guys around.